Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Hey, I'm Jamie East, and today's episode of The Smart 7 is brought to you by Sainsbury's, where you can save big on festive favourites with Nectar prices. With Christmas round the corner, it's more important than ever to find value for money on your festive shop, and that means getting your party planning done early. And this Christmas, Sainsbury's have got great discounts to make your festive season truly magical. For example, this week you can get Pepsi Max 24 times 330ml for £7, a litre of Gordon's Gin and Smirnoff Vodka, both £19, and 2 for £23 on selected packs of beer, including Budweiser 20 times 200ml and Carling 18 times 440ml, all with Nectar prices. You can shop in-store or online and save big on festive favourites this Christmas with Nectar prices at Sainsbury's. This offer's for 18+, terms and conditions apply, Nectar required. Available in-store and online, excluding locals. Delivery fee may apply, subject to availability. Please drink responsibly.
It's Saturday the 6th of December. I'm Ciara Evans, and this was a week that saw hopes for a Ukrainian peace deal fade, rows continue over the budget, pressure ramp up over Donald Trump's strikes on narco boats, and tributes to a British drama great.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
There were high hopes this week would see major progress in the efforts to secure at least a ceasefire in Russia's war on Ukraine. A US delegation was due to head to Moscow, including Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. And before they departed, they met with a Ukrainian delegation in Florida to try and get closer to an agreement. Secretary of State Rubio said that meeting was very productive as Witkoff and Kushner headed to Moscow.
We don't just want to end the war, we also want to help Ukraine be safe forever, so never again will they face another invasion, and equally importantly, we want them to enter an age of true prosperity.
Monday saw Ukrainian President Zelensky begin a process of rallying his European allies with a meeting with French President Macron in Paris.
I really believe that in the weeks to come, the pressure on the Russian economy and the capacity of Russia to finance the war efforts will drastically change.
Pair also called other European leaders and made a call to Witkoff in Moscow as they sought to make Ukraine's position clear. Finland's Foreign Minister Elena Valtonen is concerned that Ukraine is getting pushed into a deal that may not even stand up to scrutiny.
I have heard voices basically pushing Ukraine towards, accepting some sort of concessions in order to just have some sort of peace. I'm not sure whether all of these parties realise what they're essentially asking of Ukraine.
Donald Trump's peace envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner were in Moscow on Tuesday to meet the Russian president and discuss the Ukraine peace plan. Putin spoke before the meeting and warned that Russia is not seeking a war with Europe, but if Europe wants to fight, we're ready now. He was also dismissive of Ukraine's European allies' attempts to get involved in the peace process.
Europeans have no peaceful agenda. They are on the side of war. We can clearly see that when they try to make changes to Trump's proposal, they are aimed at one thing only: to block the entire peace process.
There wasn't any significant progress from the talks, and Ukrainian President Zelensky continued his tour of Europe, touching down in Ireland, where he addressed the Parliament. As a neutral country, Ireland offered support for Ukraine's bid to join the European Union, and Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin is no fan of the Russian president either.
President Putin has shown a complete indifference to the value of human life, even as efforts to bring the war to an end advance. He seeks to gain advantage by intensifying Russia's relentless onslaught on Ukrainian cities.
As the week went on, it became clear that any hopes of a peace plan for Ukraine were crumbling as Vladimir Putin refused to give way during a meeting with US negotiators in Moscow. Trump's envoy got a tour of Moscow, but 5 hours of talks with the Russian leader yielded no progress at all, and they headed back to Florida to meet with a Ukrainian delegation. In the meantime, Putin has avoided further sanctions and gained more time for his troops to push forward on on the battlefield. The EU is moving towards finally unlocking frozen Russian assets in a loan, which would allow Ukraine to replenish weapon stocks. UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper was in Brussels for a NATO meeting on Wednesday with £10 million of fresh funding for Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
And we will continue to show our support for the Ukrainian people, for the sovereignty of Ukraine, and for a just and lasting peace, with the security of Europe and the security of NATO at its heart.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has a warning, though, that US patience is running out.
Some of these people have this notion that our policy should be just continue to fund Ukraine at unlimited amounts for as long as the war takes. That's not realistic, and you can't sustain the scale and scope of it. And I also think it's realistic for Russia to continue this war.
This week it also emerged that Ukraine's European allies are deeply concerned that the US is no longer a trustworthy partner when it comes to negotiations on Russia's war in Ukraine. Leaked recordings of a call between French President Macron and other EU leaders from Monday of this week saw Macron warn Zelensky that there is a chance that the US will betray Ukraine on territory without providing clarity on security guarantees. As the war drags on, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was warning that any peace proposal must comply with international law.
The violation of these rules is extremely dangerous because everywhere in the world people will feel that they can do whatever they want because international law doesn't matter anymore.
The Russian president was in India for a summit with Narendra Modi and took the chance to rewrite the history of the war for a new audience.
Our special military operation isn't the start of a war, but rather an attempt to end one that the West ignited using Ukrainians' nationalists. That's what is really happening right now. That's the crux of the problem.
It's been 10 days since Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivered the budget, but there's been no end to the wrangling over not just the budget, but the fiscal projections behind it. On Budget Day, the Office of Budget Responsibility accidentally published the budget and the projected growth numbers before the Chancellor had gotten to her feet. That's not the only controversy involving the OBR, as the new report suggests that they told Reeves in September that things were not as bad as they had first appeared, but the Chancellor did not change her narrative around the budget. She told the BBC on Sunday that she's confident she did everything correctly.
Well, the Office of Budget Responsibility have published their numbers. I've now delivered the budget. That budget is consistent with the speech that I made at the beginning of November to cut the cost of living, to cut NHS waiting lists and to cut the debt and the deficit.
Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has been particularly unimpressed and said that the Chancellor should have instead focused on cutting welfare and she should face the consequences of poor decisions.
I think the Chancellor has been doing a terrible job. She's made a mess of the economy. She has told lies. This is a woman who, in my view, should be resigning.
The ongoing dispute over the budget showed no sign of abating on Monday as the chair of Office of Budget Responsibility resigned over a pre-budget leak. Richard Hughes said he took full responsibility for the budget watchdog's failure to handle sensitive information, but it seems unlikely to bring an end to a controversy that's run for nearly a week. Prime Minister Keir Starmer restated his backing for the Chancellor on Monday and found himself dragged into the debate about OBR figures that showed the economic picture was not as gloomy as some had feared. Starmer says even if there was some positive signs in the September productivity report, it didn't change the course the Chancellor had available for her.
Look, there was no misleading. I simply don't accept, and I was receiving the numbers, that being told that the OBR productivity review means you've got £16 billion less than you would otherwise have had shows that you've got an easy starting point.
The Tories and Kemi Badenoch in particular have been calling for the Chancellor to resign or be sacked, and Tory Shadow Cabinet Minister Alex Burghardt says Starmer's backing won't make any difference.
This is a panic. This is classic attempt to try and regain his footing after a disastrous budget last week that has fallen apart over the weekend with accusations that his Chancellor lied. And what he's now trying to do is say, oh, we've got a plan for welfare, when we know that they don't.
Wednesday marked a full week since Chancellor Rachel Reeves rolled out the 2026 budget, and while many of us may already have forgotten what was in it, apart from looming tax rises because of income tax threshold freezes, the controversy over the Chancellor's numbers showed no sign of abating. At Prime Minister Question Time, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was once again calling for the Chancellor's resignation.
The Prime Minister pays tribute to the head of the OBR. If the head of the OBR had to resign over market-sensitive leaks, why
is the Chancellor still in her job?
Prime Minister Keir Starmer has consistently backed the Chancellor, and he wasn't in the mood for Badenoch's continued pursuit of Reeves.
I was very proud to lead this party at the budget last week, where the Chancellor set out that we would protect the NHS, create the conditions for economic stability, not repeating the mistake of austerity and bearing down on the cost of living. We're fixing the mess that they left, and I'm very proud to be doing so.
Aside from budget rows, there was plenty of other politics this week, including the first ever conference of the new political party founded by former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn and former Labour MP Zara Sultana. They set out to create a new political party for the left, but it's been anything but plain sailing so far. The trouble started with the name, which was unofficially Your Party, with last weekend's first party conference intended to select the new official name. Confusingly, members have voted to continue with the Your Party title. Jeremy Corbyn opened proceedings on Saturday.
We have an amazing opportunity before us. Look at the people around the country that want this party to succeed. Our movement is one of justice, equality and environmental sustainability.
Members have agreed that the party won't have a traditional leadership structure, and that's probably just as well, as co-founder Zara Sultana boycotted the first day of her own conference in a dispute over what she called a witch hunt after one of her supporters was denied entry.
There are people around Jeremy that have learnt the wrong lessons from their time in the Labour Party, and where they have been on the receiving end of witch hunts, of smears, of leaks to the press, of acts of sabotage and intimidation.
Monday saw Labour MP for Hampstead and Highgate Tulip Siddique sentenced to 2 years in jail after a court in Bangladesh found her complicit in corrupt land deals with her aunt. Her aunt is the disposed former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, and neither she nor Tulip were present for the trial. The charge was that Siddique had used her special influence as a British politician to coerce the former PM into giving land to her mother, brother and sister. Tulip's mother was also given 7 years in prison, and the Labour MP says despite repeated attempts, her lawyers haven't even had a response from the Bangladeshi authorities.
I'm absolutely baffled by the whole thing. I've still had no contact whatsoever, despite them spreading malicious allegations against me for a year and a half now.
Justice Secretary David Lammy has moved ahead this week with his plan to scrap jury trials and tackle the backlog in the court system in England and Wales. The new system will see jury trials for offences that carry likely sentences of less than 3 years abolished, and instead a new system of swift courts will tackle minor offences, while serious crimes like murder, robbery and sexual offences will still go before juries. Lammy said the current backlog, which would see some trials postponed until 2030, is no longer workable.
And let's be honest, it's a peculiar way to run a public service. Our world-leading judges should hear the most serious cases, and I agree that they and the magistrate should decide where a case is heard. This will prevent defendants from gaming the system.
His proposal came as it emerged that 12 more prisoners have been released in error, with 2 still at large. Lammy says it's a consequence of an overloaded system that's still dependent on pen and paper. Tory Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says the whole thing is a mess.
The numbers mistakenly released in the last year is higher than in the previous year. And I think it is a case of the government needs to get a grip on it.
A new report from the charity Inquest published on Wednesday says that 97 women have died in custody in the last decade, and that incidents of self-harm are at an all-time high in the nation's women's prisons. Charlie Taylor, His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons, told the BBC that the government needs to take the problems with the prison system seriously.
People are getting out before they're supposed to be leaving prison. And if, God forbid, they go on to commit a serious further offence, that is, of course, an enormous concern. The public rightly expects that if people are sent to prison, they are sentenced for a period of time and they get out when they're supposed to get out, whether that's early or whether that's late.
This week saw 2 major reports released following years-long inquiries. The first was a report from the Independent Office for Police Conduct into the policing of the Hillsborough disaster. The inquiry, which began in 2012, found that 12 officers would have faced gross misconduct charges over the policing of the events, which saw 97 Liverpool fans killed. The report identified both fundamental failures and concerted efforts to blame fans, although all of the officers had retired before the investigations began, and so families of the victims say say they will never get justice. To date, the only person convicted over the deaths was the stadium safety officer, Graham Mackerel, who was fined £6,500. Deputy Director of the OPC, Cathy Cashel, says that things are very different now.
The professional standards in place at the time were very different. The law is different now, where officers who have retired can face gross misconduct hearings. And I think what our report really shows is how difficult it is when organisations prioritise defending their reputation rather than openly and immediately admitting the mistakes that they've made.
Thursday saw another report published, this one 7 years in the making. It was the inquiry into the death of Dawn Sturgis which found that Russian President Vladimir Putin was morally responsible for the poisoning of the mother of three. The incident took place in 2018 when Russian intelligence agents attempted the assassination of former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Julia in Salisbury. Dawn had no connection to either of them, but the nerve agent which was used, called Novichok, was contained in a perfume bottle her partner found in a charity bin where it had presumably been dumped by the Russian assassins. The inquiry, which was chaired by Lord Anthony Hughes, heard evidence from the UK spy agencies, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the findings were of a grave reminder of the Kremlin's disregard for innocent lives. Lord Hughes says it's clear the order could only have been given by one man.
I've concluded that the operation to assassinate Sergei Skripal must have been authorised at the highest level, indeed by President Putin.
Still to come on the Standout 7 in association with Metro. West Streeting gets cranky over Christmas and tributes to a dramatic great.
Right after this.
Hey, I'm Jamie East, and today's episode of the Smart 7 is brought to you by Sainsbury's, where you can save big on festive favourites with Nectar prices. With Christmas round the corner, it's more important than ever to find value for money on your festive shop, and that means getting your party planning done early. And this Christmas, Sainsbury's have got great discounts to make your festive season truly magical. For example, this week you can get Pepsi Max 24 times 330ml for £7, a litre of Gordon's Gin and Smirnoff Vodka, both £19, and 2 for £23 on selected packs of beer, including Budweiser 20 times 200ml and Carling 18 times 440ml, all with Nectar prices. You can shop in-store or online and save big on festive favourites this Christmas with Nectar prices at Sainsbury's. This offer's for 18+, terms and conditions apply, Nectar required. Available in-store and online, excluding locals. Delivery fee may apply, subject to availability. Please drink responsibly.
Hear that? It's holiday cheer arriving at Ulta Beauty with gifts for everyone on your list. Treat them to fan-favorite gift sets from Charlotte Tilbury and Peach & Lily. Go all out with timeless fragrances from YSL, Ariana Grande, and Carolina Herrera. And you can never go wrong with an Ulta Beauty gift card. Head to Ulta Beauty for gifts that make the holidays brighter and even more beautiful. Ulta Beauty. Gifting happens here.
Welcome back.
The US President and his newly renamed Department of War have deployed huge resources to the Caribbean aimed at ramping up pressure on Venezuelan President Maduro. It emerged that Trump had a call with Maduro last Sunday in which he demanded that he relinquish power and offered that the Venezuelan president rejected unless he and his allies were offered a global amnesty. In the meantime, reporting from the Washington Post has raised new questions in Congress over the legality of the lethal strikes on small boats that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says target narco-terrorists. Now Venezuela's National Assembly President George Rodriguez says they too are investigating.
We will activate the action of the Attorney General's office so that the Attorney General's office also addresses the crimes committed against Venezuelans and Latin Americans in the Caribbean Sea. We will also request a meeting with the Bolivarian government to establish strategies to support the families of Venezuelans killed in these extrajudicial executions.
The FBI finally made an arrest on Thursday in the case of the mystery pipe bomber who left devices outside both the Republican and Democrat headquarters the night before January 6th, almost 5 years ago. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, members of Congress were shown footage of the controversial first and second strikes on what the Trump administration says was a narco-terrorist boat, which took place in September. Secretary for War Pete Hegseth has denied giving an explicit order to kill two survivors, but senior Democrats who viewed the footage say they believe it is a war crime. The president continued to defend the actions in the Oval Office.
I think you're going to find that this is war
that these people were killing our people by the millions, actually, if you look over a few years. I think last year we lost close to 300,000 people were killed. That's not mentioning all the families.
There's bad news if you have a medical appointment between now and Christmas, as the resident doctors are set to stage another 5-day walkout in the week before Santa arrives. The strike will start on Wednesday the 17th of December and run through to the 22nd. It's the 14th strike in the last 2.5 years, and they continue to look for additional pay rises to compensate for what they say is wage deflation since 2008. Health Secretary Wes Streeting says the British Medical Association haven't had a conversation with them and compared them to the Grinch who stole Christmas. Dr. Tom Dolphin is the chair of BMA, and he says the problem is bigger than Christmas.
That in itself is an argument that the government is making to distract people from the fact that you've got a long-term workforce problem that needs solving. You've got patients who need those doctors to be training so that they can get the waiting lists down, and that's not what's happening.
There was no sign of a Christmas ceasefire in the ongoing battle between the British Medical Association and Health Secretary Wes Streeting on Wednesday. The BMA hasn't engaged in fresh talks with Streeting, even though he says it's open to discussion around other supports, including training. But the refusal to have a conversation has infuriated the Health Secretary.
Their own representatives are far from saying, isn't it great, look at what our members have done, look at the modernisation, look at the improvement in patient satisfaction. They are sat in the corner like moaning minis when actually their members are doing a really good job.
The death was announced last Saturday of the award-winning playwright Sir Tom Stoppard at the age of 88. He was born in Czechoslovakia, but his family fled to England shortly after the end of World War II, where he was a journalist, then a drama critic, and beginning in 1960 became a playwright. His works included Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and many film screenplays including Brazil, Empire of the Sun and Shakespeare in Love, for which he won both an Oscar and a Golden Globe. His death was mourned by many, including Mick Jagger and King Charles and Queen Camilla, who said they were deeply saddened by the passing of one of our greatest writers. He continued to work, winning another Tony Award in 2023 for Best New Play, and he told CNN the urge to write never left him. Rest in peace, Tom.
I've got a rather specious reputation as being some kind of intellectual playwright or difficult playwright. I don't look upon myself in that way at all. I love writers with a popular touch, and at the moment I'm sitting here with nothing to write, and I'm thinking I really ought to try and write something else.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world. Hey, I'm Jamie East, and today's episode of The Smart 7 is brought to you by Sainsbury's, where you can save big on festive favourites with Nectar prices. With Christmas round the corner, it's more important than ever to find value for money on your festive shop, and that means getting your party planning done early. And this Christmas, Sainsbury's have got great discounts to make your festive season truly magical. For example, this week you can get Pepsi Max 24 times 330ml for £7, a litre of Gordon's Gin and Smirnoff Vodka, both £19, and 2 for £23 on selected packs of beer, including Budweiser 20 times 200ml and Carling 18 times 440ml, all with Nectar prices. You can shop in-store or online and save big on festive favourites this Christmas with Nectar prices at Sainsbury's. This offer's for 18+, terms and conditions apply, Nectar required. Available in-store and online, excluding locals. Delivery fee may apply, subject to availability. Please drink responsibly.
You know what's faster than your paycheck? Literally everything. It's time to get your pay up to speed. With Earnin, you can access your pay as you work instead of waiting days and weeks for a paycheck. Get up to $150 a day with a max of $750 between paydays. No interest, no credit checks, and no mandatory fees. Because, hey, it's your money. Download the Earnin app now to get it and join millions of people making any day payday. That's EARNIN. Earnin is not a bank. Access limits are based on your earnings and risk factors. Available in select states. Expedited transfers available for a fee. Terms and restrictions apply. Visit earnin.com for full details.